Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This is Sister Sophia Khan. I'm the Epic Youth Mentor for the girls, and today we have with us Imam Nadim Bashir. He is the Imam of Islamic Center, East Plano Islamic Center. And today's topic, inshallah, we are doing a program, a special program for our youth girls, which is what we call over here at Epic the Friday Night Lights program. This is a weekly program that we have for the youth girls where we go ahead, we come together, we hang out, socialize, but more importantly, we talk about certain issues, certain topics where we can discuss and hear each other out. So obviously with what's been going on around us and with our masjid premises being closed off, with us not being able to get together as a group socially, we thought that we would do something a little bit more interactive online. And that's where, we've decided to come together and have this session where we can talk about what do you feel at this very moment with what's happening around us. So we want to hear from our youth today. So before I go ahead and start talking about this, and Imam Nadim, we want you girls to come up with a few things that you girls are, you want to ask us, you have some sort of questions, anything that you feel you want to talk about, and you know that we are here to help you out answer whatever it may be. So inshallah, the first thing that I do want to mention is that this hardship that is come upon us as a believer, how do we handle it, right? And the most important thing is the ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah. And specifically in this ayah, Allah says, "And certainly we shall test you with something of fear, hunger, loss of wealth, lives, and fruits. But give glad tidings to who? To as-sabirin, the patient ones," right? So as the youth, right now we are irritated. We're just like, what's going on? Our entire world has turned upside down. But how can we approach this? Allah says very clearly that approach it in a very patient way. Be amongst the sabirin. So the next thing is that, and those who believe, right? So as us as Muslims, we are the believers. Seek help in patience and as-salah. Truly, Allah is with the as-sabirun. So that is something that we have to, that no matter how confused we are, no matter how anxious we feel, that fear of what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen a month from now, right? We're literally living day by day. And subhanAllah, every single day, every single hour, we're getting various news from everywhere. I mean, we just got to know about Medina Munawwara and, Masjid al-Nabawi and that being closed down. And this is very, very unusual for all of us, right? But again, we're talking about you guys as the youth. As adults, we hear from everywhere how they're feeling, how they're facing, working from home. But what about you guys? How is it going for you at home? How are you dealing with your siblings, with your parents every day? It's a lot more interaction than you were getting before. And that's inshallah what I want you girls to, we've got our live chat feed here, and I want you girls to send in questions or anything that you want to talk about in relation to what we are currently facing. Now we'll have Imam Nadim mention a few things.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To our youth, first of all is that Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh to our youth. First of all, as Sister Sophia mentioned, yes, we all are going through a very difficult time. SubhanAllah, it's Friday night. I'm sure, all the time we're at the masjid, but right now the masajid are empty. And it is truly aching, it is truly sad to see that on the day of Friday, instead of us being at the masjid, remembering Allah, invoking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remembering and sending our peace and blessings upon the Prophet ﷺ at the masjid, we are forced to stay at home. And this is for our own khair, and this is based on what we have been told. So nonetheless, this is a very difficult time. However, at the same time, it doesn't mean that this is the end of the road, this is the end of the line. This is a time where we, as a Muslim, we come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you know, one thing that we find in the Quran is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always told, whenever there was a situation when the Muslims felt like, what's going to happen? In the battle of Uhud, when there was a rumor that went around that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, you know, I want you to understand and try to put yourself in that situation. They actually literally thought that this was the end of the road for them. I mean, the Sahaba are thinking to themselves that if the Prophet is gone, then what's it for us here? Why are we doing this? Why are we fighting this battle? And subhanAllah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course we knew that it was a rumor about him, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us something interesting at that time, and we read this in the Quran till today, and that is وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِ الرُّسُلِ. That deen is not for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but the deen is Allah's deen, and as long as Allah is there, we will continuously come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So at that time, that was their dilemma that they were facing. Today, this is our dilemma that we are facing, and we need to just at this time come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, and I want you to keep this in mind, if there is one who has put us in this situation, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as the ahadith mentioned, this is 2020, I understand, but in the Lawhul Mahfuz, in the protected tablet, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He told the pen to write, and it wrote the qadr, that is the qadr or the divine decree. Believe it or not, this was written in the divine decree so many thousands of years ago that in 2020 this incident will take place. And it was written already that in 2020 the people of the world are going to be put to test. So at this time, it's not about folding tent. It's not about giving up. It's about becoming stronger and understanding that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and understanding that inshallah you and I are very, very strong. You know, we think that we are weak, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows us better than we know ourselves. And Allah tells us, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, that Allah will never put upon us something that is beyond our capacity. So that's why I want you to understand that if Allah has brought this upon you, and you're thinking to yourself that you will not be able to handle this, you're actually wrong. You have the capacity. You do have the capacity to handle this. And you do have the capacity to come through, inshallah. You just have to really tell yourself, because the fact that Allah brought it upon us, that means that Allah knows that we can handle it.
Absolutely. Jazakallah khair, Imam Nadim. Inshallah, now we have one question I just received from one of the youth girls, and she asked us, can you talk about ways we can be more productive spiritually and connect with Allah at this time and always have that? So it's not just, I believe what she's asking is that it's not just right now that we have that, connection, but we continue that even during times of, when it's easier again, when things are going easy for us, that we still have that connection, that we don't lose that.
So, one thing is that I've learned over the years is challenges, whenever a person is put in a challenging situation, it brings out the best in you. And it is true that probably, you may or may not be so religiously connected, so spiritually connected, and there is nothing wrong. And if you're thinking to yourself that, well, I don't want to seem hypocritical, that in times of difficulty I call out to Allah, and when things were going absolutely fine, I completely forgot about Allah. How will Allah feel? This is a thought of shaitan. What Allah wants from us is that in times of difficulty like this, Allah wants us to come close to Him. And the best way to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that there's a lot of things that we can do. First of all is that we have to take care of our basics. We really have to take care of our basics, and that is our salawat and so forth. The only way There's a hadith Qudsi that's also mentioned that wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the very first thing that we have to do in order to come close to Allah is to take care of our basics. And that is our 5-time daily prayers. And I understand, what happens many times when you're at home and, you're in quarantine, what happens is that you feel at times, lazy. Oh, you know what, there's a lot of time left. I'm not going anywhere. I have nothing to do. I'll pray Salah later on. And so the very first thing I would say is that try to take care of your basics. The second thing that I think we all have to do is we have to take a step back and try to reflect and try to do our own muhasabah. And what I mean by muhasabah is, just self-reflection. Because look, there is no doubt in the fact that we all have weaknesses. All of us have weaknesses. I have weaknesses. Every human being has weaknesses. There's no such thing called the perfect human being. So I think what's important to know is that, we should sit down and just reflect upon our own self. And ask our own self is that, what can I do to bring a change in my life? And what sins am I indulging in? What things can I do to change my life around? And so I would say that do your own muhasabah. At the same time, I would say to everyone, read an abundance of istighfar. And this is not something that I would just recommend only in these times. And let's just say that inshallah, thumma inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His mercy.
Ameen.
And we ask Allah that He alleviate us from this challenge as soon as possible. And it is my dua, and I put my, I have conviction in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I always make dua that we are able to spend Ramadan, inshallah, inside the masjid with our community members. But keep in mind is that istighfar is not something only in times of calamity. In the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we find that the Prophet alayhi salam, according to one riwayah in Bukhari, one riwayah in Muslim, he will seek the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In one riwayah it says 100 times, in one riwayah it says 70 times. And some of the ulama have even mentioned that what does 70 or 100 mean? Does it mean exactly 100 or 70? And some of the ulama have mentioned that no, this is just a number to show an abundance. That the Prophet would abundantly make istighfar. So I would say that this is a good time to make istighfar and the practices that we build up right now. So for example, being punctual about our salawat, being punctual about making istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reading Quran, taking time out. I think these are some of the good habits that we can build upon right now. And I would urge everyone that whatever practices that we build right now, make sure they are alive in our life, even once this pandemic, inshallah, does come to an end.
Inshallah. And I wanted to add something, Imam Nadim, with what you just said. SubhanAllah, if you girls know that we had plans on having a pre-Ramadan program, and this was going to be at the beginning of the first week of April. But SubhanAllah, Allah has pushed us to start from now, and it's not even learning about it, it's taking action from now. So it's the istighfar, it's reading Quran. Allah's not saying that, okay, you have time, wait till Ramadan, prepare right now. He's just pushed us right into it. Like sometimes you don't know how to swim, and it's just that our parents are just like, okay, just go into the water and you'll figure it out by yourself. And that's pretty much what Allah has done. That Allah has put us in this situation and He's like, you know exactly what to do, right? It's just that, how are we going to take it? Are we going to grab that opportunity? Or we're going to be neglectful and instead what? Be lazy when it comes to our prayers. Be like, oh, okay, I'm at home. I've got quite a bit of time. You hear the call of the adhan at home, or it's the time for Maghrib, but you're just like, okay, another 10, 15 minutes. And subhanAllah, we've got social media, right? We are on our phones now more than ever, phones, laptops, because that is what we're using. The way we interact with each other now is literally through the phone and nowhere else, or the laptop. But we have to take that aside, right? Put that aside and be like, okay, first of all, give our eyes as well a rest. We need that much needed rest. We need to go outside. Just because we are self-isolated does not mean, or we're trying to do social distancing, does not mean we can go out, we don't need to go out and take that breath, fresh air. Breathe it in, right? Before it gets too hot, especially if you're in Texas, then you know that the weather is only going to get hotter here. So these are just ways where, and then we look at, just yesterday, it was sent out in the groups, that beautiful rainbow that was up in here in Dallas, that, after that rain. And subhanAllah, just look at Allah's perfection, Allah's creation, and magnify Allah through these things. And these are those small little steps. When you appreciate these beauties, then you'll say, Alhamdulillah, for me, Alhamdulillah, I'm a Muslim. Alhamdulillah, despite this hardship, despite this difficulty in our lives, we are appreciating, we're seeing the positive, repercussions in this very situation. So that's another thing, just a reminder for all of us that Allah didn't say, wait till Ramadan and then start reading your Quran, your tafsir. We're starting now, this very second. So Imam Nadim, did you want to add anything, or?
Well, one thing I did want to mention about all this is that I think it's important for us to also discuss about, I'm sure that a lot of the youth are thinking that, why is Allah doing all this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure this is coming to their mind. There might be a youth thinking to themselves, well, I go to the masjid, I read the Quran, I'm a very religious, girl. Why is all this happening to me? And this goes for anyone. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about the same question. And the very first thing is that, I want us to all think about this, that we live in America. And, subhanAllah, it's very saddening to begin with by saying this, that, there's a lot of dhulm that is taking place on earth right now. And, you just go back a few months and, living in America, when we live our life and we're so consumed with this very fast-paced life that we live in, even when we see things happening across the globe, across the world, and we see, oppression taking place, eventually what happens to many of us is that we just become desensitized. Mm-hmm. We see these kind of things and we're thinking to ourselves that, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help them, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be with them. And the most we generally do is that we may either share that story on our Facebook page or share via WhatsApp or share on social media, or we may just send like a sad emoji or something of that type. But I want all of you to think about, go back before this pandemic broke out. Just look at the world that we lived in and just think about this. I mean, we know what was going on with our brothers and sisters in India to begin with. I mean, it was just so sad that people are going into other people's homes. Children are crying. Parents are being taken out of their homes and beaten. And with, no mercy. We know what's going on, then we know what's going on in Palestine and how they're so cut off. We see what's happening to our Uyghur Muslim brothers and sisters. And how there's so many videos that circulate on social media where you see kids crying, kids being snatched away from their parents. We see what's happening in Syria. We see what's happening in Burma. We see what's happening, in so many different places around the world. And not only that, not only is it where you find dhulm being done against people, but think about the other creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm sure you've seen this online, but there's so many videos that if you even just Google, you'll find, like where if there were no human beings on Earth, the Earth would be able to, recapture its, its glory in one way. If people were not on Earth, how Earth would thrive again, how nature would thrive again. And so you even go back and you look at what is happening to the makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just look at the animals. The animals, the animals in the seas, in the lakes, in the water, in the oceans. And we see what's happening to our lands. We see how much trash is being thrown. This is their habitat at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, eventually there came a time that where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, enough is enough. Dhulm against animals, dhulm against their habitat, dhulm against other human beings, and even animals, they call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not only that, but people are just worried about themselves And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I mean, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His forgiveness. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly forgive us for our negligence. And it's sad, and you know, every time I talk about this, my heart trembles that, you know, we did not do a good enough job. I mean, honestly, it hurts. It really, really hurts that, I mean, how much dhulm is going on, and we're just so neglected. I mean, we're so neglectful. And eventually, all these people making dua, and all these people crying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and eventually, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is thinking, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He may have done this thinking that enough is enough. And so I think for all of us, Muslim brothers and sisters, this is a time to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a time to really, really ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. And not only that, I want to give it back to Sister Sophia. I want to also say this, that, you know, one of the most, according to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is something called mujahara. One is mujahada, that is to make a sacrifice. One is called mujahara. And you may be asking, what exactly is mujahara? Mujahara is first of all, in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned that mujahara is very, very despised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Sahaba, they asked what exactly is mujahara, and the Prophet ﷺ, he responded by saying that is when a person, he commits sins, and they commit fahisha, and then they eventually, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He covers up that sin, but they are the ones who announce their sin to the world. You know, and what's happening is that not only are we seeing that people are doing dhulm against each other, we're seeing people announcing it. You know, showing it to the world that this is the dhulm that we are doing and we are committing. And so when I look at the current times that we're living in, I mean, this is just my own theory. I really, really believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to realize what's going on here. Just because we live in America, or we might live in a place where we're living, you know, peacefully and in security, you know, when we neglect other people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will eventually bring us to our knees, and He will make us repent. And this is just, I mean, it's really sad, but this is, you know, this is what comes to my mind. Before all this happened, if you just reflect on worldly events, this is what comes to my mind, Sister Sophia.
Very true. Jazakallah khair, Imam Nadim. We have a few more questions. So one of them, she writes, I am just lonely, and I wish I could talk with my friends, and I don't know how long this will go for. Not always am I able to talk to them every day, and I'm just worried about my elderly family.
So, I mean, that's a good question. It's also a difficult question to answer because I don't know the whole scenario, but I mean, if someone is lonely, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I understand we're not able to be around other family members. At the same time, I mean, look, I will say this also because I don't want to start giving advices when I'm not in that position, especially if there's like mental health involved and so forth. So if there's a person who's going through some mental health issues, I'm not the expert. I think you need to reach out to someone. And just today, subhanAllah, I was actually watching the news today, and they were actually talking about this, that people who are at home, who have self-quarantined themselves, if they are going through any kind of depression or anything of that type, they need to reach out to the health experts and the psychiatrists and to people who are experts in this field and get some advice from them.
Absolutely.
So I mean, keeping that in mind. So if there's a mental health issue, I'm not the person, but I can just give a general advice, and that is that if you have to self-quarantine yourself, remember that inshallah, this is not going to be something that is going to be hopefully not long-term, inshallah. And at times, just got to make a sacrifice to do what is necessary. And every single person, right now in the world, we're not. I mean, for a lot of people, this is not the daily routine. Mm-hmm. We all are making sacrifices in one way, but to the sister who is saying that she's lonely, I would say that try to find something to keep yourself occupied. Yes. I would tell you that, Sister Sophia, I'm sure you agree with me on this, that, I still believe that the fact that we have internet at home,
Yes.
you know, I mean, this is just, I believe this is one of the most, I mean, one of the most priceless commodities that we have at home.
Absolutely.
Is that we have internet, you know, and we're able to keep ourselves occupied. And so, look, there's so many things that can bring peace to your heart. You know, listen to the Quran. You know, if it's not listening to the Quran, if it's about listening to a lecture, then do that if you need to. But I'm sure that you find something, and talk to an expert, talk to some of your friends. Look, at the end of the day, we still can't FaceTime with other people. We can FaceTime with our family members and so forth. So it's not like where we don't even have access to internet. And I will say this, that, you know, when we talk about the lockdown that took place in Kashmir some time ago, they didn't even have access to internet. So just think about this. Think about if we were stuck at home all day long and we didn't have access to internet, and we have no access to the outside world. That's not what's going on with us. So alhamdulillah, at least we have things that can really take away that loneliness. But I would say that there's nothing better than family. This is the right time to connect with your family. Try to connect with your family, if not in person, but, you know, via social media and so forth. Do connect with them, inshallah.
Absolutely. And Imam Nadim brought up a really good point, and this is something that I personally was also reflecting on, that imagine this happened 15 years ago or even 10 years ago. The way we've got our social media, the laptops, our computers, and how we're just, you know, quickly watching everything, we didn't have that 10 years ago. So, you know, there's a hikmah, there's a wisdom behind why this is happening to us right now and not 10 years ago. And so again, still, alhamdulillah, that it's happening to us now and not then.
Yeah, especially when it comes to parents. I mean,
Yeah.
I think parents are, they
Yes.
appreciate the internet more than anyone else.
Absolutely. One more question we've got. I'm wondering how we can help others virtually and still be productive.
So, I mean, there's many ways that we can help people virtually. I think just like today, I was reading some stories about like how people are connecting people who are in need with the right people to get help. There's a lot of things that we can do, and that's the one beautiful thing about the internet, is that it's the world at our fingers, honestly. It's the world on our laptop. There's so much that we can do. And the very first thing that we have to do is that we have to reach out to other people. See, if there are people in the community who have this reputation that they are the people who usually help out. And so you may want to help, but you may not know where to help. And I will say that, you can go online. There's so many resources online that where they will tell you that this is what you can do from home, or this is what you can do to help other people. And so, check out those sites and see what's going on in your own city, wherever you are. I'm sure that wherever you are, anywhere around the world, there's some humanitarian workers that are going around helping other people. So I think the very first thing is that if you don't want to get out and interact with other people, even while you're on your phone, there's always things that you can do. Like, for example, if you find some, really, nice piece of information that can help other people, some tips that you can give to other people that can benefit them in any capacity. Sharing that with other people, that's a way you can virtually help other people. So there's so many things you can do. I would suggest that you go online, and they usually have certain websites where they actually can tell you where you can help and how you can help people online. Not only that, but I would also suggest that even the youth can reach out to the other youth, mm-hmm. and just get on FaceTime for a while. And especially if you know someone who's having a really difficult time getting through this, look, at the end of the day, we are a Muslim community. That's why we are there for. Absolutely. We're there to help each other out. And especially in times of crisis like this, if we're not there to help each other out, then what's the point of the Muslim community? So I would strongly urge, and one thing I do want to mention that just came to my mind, especially when it comes to the youth, is just yesterday, I jumped onto a phone call. This was with the White House. This was a phone call for the clergy members around the United States. And I was able to jump on, and the one thing that they said was that especially for the youth and for the young adults of the communities, and they said to us very clearly that please tell the young people of your community to seek social isolation and social distancing. I mean, you have to. I mean, what I'm seeing a lot of times is that, especially when it comes to our youth, is this is not a mini vacation. This is not that, okay, you know what, things are closed down, let's just go out, hang out, and so forth. If our people, if our health experts, our city officials, they're urging us, doctors are urging us that while we are taking care of patients at the hospital, please stay at home. This is us helping them out. This is us helping them out. Now, you know, a lot of times we're under this assumption, especially with the young people, that, you know, this is not going to affect us. And even if it does affect us, we can, you know, bounce out of it and we can, you know, hopefully recover, because, you know, we've always, for the most part, we've heard that the most of the people who are passing away because of this pandemic are the elderly community. And the, you know, the reality is that even right now in America, there are a lot of young people getting sick. So you are helping the situation if you are doing your job. So I would say that do not get together. No social gatherings, please, especially the youth. No social gatherings. You know, stay at home. You know, busy yourself with something that is productive. And, you know, I would say that just truly, please, you know, listen to what the health experts are saying and do what they're telling you to do, please. So this is how, you know, that's how I feel about this.
Absolutely. And I agree with what Imam Nadim has said. It's just that, you know, again, it is irritating, you know, it's agitating. It's not like us to just stay at home and, you know, not have that social life that we're so used to. But this is what will only be easier for everyone. Again, we have to get out of that bubble that we're in. We have to think about more than just ourselves for this, right? We have to be selfless. And it's not easy, but we can do it. And with this, inshallah, for sure, this will help the entire humanity. If each and every one of us, we take that upon us, that we're gonna stay at home, that we're not going to go out and, you know, go out in groups, go to the mall, go out to eat. Obviously, there are things that have been closed down, but still, you know, we've got those little areas that are still open, but let's avoid that. Let's just try just for a little while. And for sure, Allah will see our efforts. And I tell you girls this all the time, especially the ones who come to my discussions, that Allah does not He does not expect us to be perfect in any way. But what does He look at? He looks at our effort. How much of an effort are we making? Or are we taking this for granted and taking it easy and be like, yeah, whatever, it's not affecting me, so I'm gonna go on and, you know, live my life, right? Or am I going to just make a little bit of an effort? Just make that effort, stay at home, and you'll see, it'll just be easier.
One thing I did want to mention is that, you know, a lot of times we may think that we may not have the capacity, and something came to my mind. There was a book I read some time ago. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in there, the author, he writes that, you know, there's something called a stimulus and there's something called a response. So for example, you know, some people, they go outside in the morning, and if it's a rainy day, that's a stimulus, and their response generally is that then they're like in a bad mood. So he gives the example. He said that there was a long time ago, this was back in when we're talking about World War II and so forth, there was a neurologist who was sitting in a camp, and his family members had all, you know, they had all died, and he was sitting there in a jail cell, and he's thinking to himself that I will probably die any time now. And I want you to think about this for a second. He's saying that I could die at any time, and that is true. He could have died at any time. So I mean, logically speaking, if you're in that situation, you're thinking, you're anxious, you have no idea what to do. But he says that what I did was that one is a stimulus and one is a response. But between those two things, there's something called the power to choose. And what that means is that at the end of the day, I have the power to choose how I'm going to react to a situation. So yes, with this whole pandemic going on, and a lot of times we're thinking to ourselves that, oh, you know, this is the end of the world and so forth, and what's going to happen. And I would say that, you know what, let's just take one day at a time. Take one day at a time. Do not, if you start thinking that, oh my God, 3 months into the future, 4 months in the future, you know, and we've heard people, you know, and
we've heard people saying, 18 months into the future. We've heard people saying, a year into the future, and this is going to be the situation. We're thinking like, oh my God, how will I get through this? There's something called the power to choose.
Yes.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given each of us, you may not know it, and that's where you have to dig a little deep within your own self, and you have to find that power, that where you truly have, we all have
Absolutely.
that ability how to react.
True.
And if we let situations dictate how we react, that means that I'm weak. That means that there could be something that is going on, and that has enough power that it will dictate how I will react or how I will behave. That shows that I'm weak. So that's why we all have to be strong, and we have to say that no, inshallah, we will get through this. And inshallah, yes, it's a difficult time upon all of us, but inshallah, we'll get through this. And if you have that mentality, inshallah, we all will get through this. And look, change is always difficult. Change is always difficult. And one is like, people talk about change in small matters. This is a major change, I understand. But change is difficult. But at the same time, inshallah, once we get a week, probably 2 weeks into this, we will get a little more accustomed to it, and we will see that there's things that we can do. But the most important thing is that just find something at home that you can do that will help your productivity. There's so many things that you can do online. There's so many things that you can learn online. There's unlimited resources of learning online. And even if you have to get away with it, like I know a lot of times people and youth, they like to do different things online and so forth, and make sure that it's halal, okay? But at the same time, keeping in mind that if you need to break away from your spirituality for a moment and do something that can take your mind off of that, I understand. But at the same time, it's not the end of the world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this ability, this power inside to make decisions for ourselves.
Absolutely.
We cannot let external affairs or let other things dictate how we will behave, inshallah.
So there was one last question, and so you mentioned online, things that we could possibly do,
Yeah.
but what about offline so that we can limit that screen time that we already
True.
are using?
So, I would say that, of course, the more offline it is better, spending time with our family, trying to find something to do. And look, this comes down to every single person, how they feel. It comes down to how every person feels. To be honest, there are some people who feel that they don't want to go outside and help out. And there are some people who feel like, let me go outside and help out. And if you feel like you want to go outside and you want to help out and deliver aid to other people's houses, get involved. Like right now, we're going through a time that, religion is no longer a factor here. We have, people from all different faiths coming together, putting aside their religious beliefs and just helping out humanity.
Sure.
And so that's why I will say that if you feel like you want to do that, and go ahead and do that. And the Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith that Wallahu fi awni al-abd ma dama al-abdu fi awni akhi, that as long as you're helping someone else out, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help will always be with you.
Absolutely.
So I would say that go out and help out if you wish. I'm not saying that you have to. If you want to. When you put a smile on someone else's face, it is such a feeling, wallahi, it's such an amazing feeling that it's hard to describe to anyone. It's this pleasure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you in your heart that you're able to help someone else out. And I remember there was one youth who also asked me that what's the benefit of all this that we're going through too? And the way I look at this is that if you think about it, first of all, is this pandemic has brought us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes.
This pandemic has, I can almost guarantee you, Sister Sophia, that once the masajid, inshallah, when they reopen, people will come in floods to the masjid because they miss the masjid.
Yeah.
This is going to create this love for the masjid
that people have lost. If people were not coming to the masjid, people are going to want to come back to the masjid. People are going to value the masjid. People are coming closer to Allah. People are now getting online and saying, everyone, let's fast, let's make dua.
Yes.
This is where we see that people are going out of their way to help other people out. Look, I'm going to be honest with you here that there are some benefits that have come out of this in one way.
Absolutely.
There are some benefits that have come out of this in one way. And, a long time ago, this reminds me also of, the tragic events that took place on 9/11.
Yeah.
Even at that time, Muslims in America were living their life of just collecting and just living their own life of peace, where as long as they have, a nice house, they have a nice income, everything is fine. And, of course, the events that took place on 9/11 are very tragic, and our prayers and thoughts go out to the victims and their families. And the one thing that I saw that came out of 9/11 was the amount of dawah work that increased after that. There was no dawah work before that, dawah work increased after that. How many people started getting in touch with other faith leaders, other faith communities? All this happened after 9/11. So we have to understand that, yes, these kind of times, they do come upon us. At the same time, there's always going to be some hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Absolutely.
And spending time with our families. We've always complained about not spending time with our families.
Yes.
This is a good time to spend time with our families. And I know that, I know some youth, they're probably sitting at home and saying, we don't want to be with our siblings at home,
Yeah.
We'd rather be going somewhere else and hanging out. But, family is family. At the end of the day, you may not realize it, but family is family. So that's why I would say that, there are going to be some benefits that will come out of this. And as I said, the most beautiful thing that I see right now is, people are going online, they're trying to find every single lecture to bring them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the humanitarian work is just phenomenal that's going on in our cities. I met a pastor just a few days ago before this whole pandemic broke out here, or, before the churches and, synagogues and the Masjid, they closed down. And, this is what he was telling me. He said that this is going to bring us together. This is going to bring us closer. And this is what I've seen, honestly.
Absolutely. Sometimes, just like today, Friday, it being Friday, and Friday evening, as youth girls, you all know how we used to just come, gather in the youth lounge, hang out, socialize. And subhanAllah, sometimes, there are these things that I'm sure we took for granted. And then it's just moments like this, it puts things into perspective and just kind of opens our eyes and see, if anything, again, it just shows Allah's existence in everything. Allah's, how majestic and how magnificent Allah is in all of this, that He truly is Al-Azim, the greatest in everything that's around us. And so just a little bit of an advice to you girls now, considering that, we have our, screen time and all of that, but at the same time, possibly now do something that, again, you girls were not able to do when you had school, you were going to school, you were going out. So maybe something at home. And, the best thing, maybe those who love baking, those who love cooking, those who like to do art, calligraphy. Maybe you had that talent and you know that you wanted to pick up that paintbrush and start something, but you just didn't have time because instead we were busy on our phones, we were busy, going out with our friends. So these are the ways that we could probably put that in and use that self-isolation that we're in it, so we might as well make the most of it. And inshallah, I just want to say one last thing, inshallah, that you girls as Epic Youth Girls and youth girls in general, as the Epic Youth Mentor, I am here for you girls. And you know that as Epic, we are here as a community. And I'm also here for you girls. So if you want to text me, call me, you know that I'm here, right? So don't feel that you are lonely. Don't think that you are the only one in this situation. We're all in it together. And just like what Imam Nadim said, that if this is not going to bring us closer together as a community, then what's the purpose? as a Muslim community, what is our purpose then? And that's just something that we have to remind each other.
Yeah, and I'll say to all the girls that if there's anything that you need, I would strongly recommend that you reach out to Sister Sophia and talk to her. A lot of times the best way to get something off of our heart is to talk to someone about it. And so this is why, alhamdulillah, we have Sister Sophia, mashallah, with us, that she's able to talk to the sisters and talk to them, counsel them whenever they need. And not only that, but if there's anything that, inshallah, I'll be working very close with Sister Sophia, inshallah. So if there's anything that I can do on my end, inshallah, for any of the youth, inshallah, I'm always there for all of you guys. You all
absolutely, know that. Absolutely. Jazakallah khair, Imam Nadim. I really appreciate you taking the time out and speaking to all of us.
Jazakallah khair. I mean, this is something that, I love the youth of the community.
Alhamdulillah.
And is one of the things that is a passion, that just, working with the youth. And I know that a lot of times in this time, adults find ways to do things and so forth, but our youth are struggling. I know our youth are struggling.
Yeah.
So that's why, we're always here, me, Sister Sophia, and the rest of us, we're all here for all of you at all times.
Jazakallah Jazakallah khair, you guys. Inshallah, we'll be seeing you next week around the same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.